Okay, so now we get to the design part of the template. Okay, there is basically the template always uses two colors, a combination of two colors, and here you can select the colors, and this is a live preview, so you see exactly what's going to happen, what you're going to see, and this is like an example of the homepage. So let's say that now I'm using gray and brown. Gray it uses various shades of gray, and we see them here. So this would be the gray. It uses one thing to note: if you select gray here, it will use all these colors, all these here. These are just different shades. So you don't select one particular one. You select the row. So in this case, if you select orange, it will use all these colors. And the shade will be chosen based on the other stuff to make sure that everything is nicely visible. So the other color is the secondary color. And so, for example, the secondary color is used for the menu bar, for the footer, and for some headings, etc. So theoretically, you could choose the same for both. In this case, now I have gray and gray, so we see that the menu is in the same color as this. But I would not recommend doing this because I cannot 100% guarantee that everything will look nice. Like, it could happen that some text will be hard to read. So it's better probably to use two colors. So let's say, okay, well, I like red, so I want to use red for the primary color, and for the secondary color, I want to use green. So this is what my page would look like. And this flag is automatically chosen based on what we specified here. So you'll see the flag of your country here. Let's say I change this, and I put in country, and let's say I put SK. And now I choose again. Oh, sorry, I forgot to change this. Never mind. So we see this live preview. This flag on your page would obviously show your country. So this is just an example. And here we specify the font. Again, we have two fonts. This is the primary font. So we see we can choose one. And that's used for main text. Secondary font is used for headings and for the menu, for example. So again, we choose the one we want, primary, secondary, and gradient colors. If you are a fan of gradients, which, for example, I'm not, and if you want your page, it's currently recommended not to use gradients because that's like the current web design trend. But if you really want to use gradients, you just click yes, and you see that everything is now uses like a color gradient here. So if I now have, let's say, the primary color set to yellow, we see a gradient. If I disable this, this is what you would get. So it's up to you to choose. The default is no, and that's what I like, but again, it's up to you. Units. This, again, is absolutely crucial to get right. Otherwise, you might end up having your data in your database completely incorrect. There are two sets of units. One called database units and one called display units. Database units, and again, everything that I say in this video is always explained here. So if you don't understand anything, then most likely, if you read this, you will basically know what I'm talking about. And what database units is, it's the units in which the numbers are saved in your database. And this can never be changed in the future. Because if you change this in the future, you'll end up having two different units in your database treated as one, as a same unit. In other words, all the statistics. So for example, if you later on change this to Fahrenheit, you will have half of your database in Celsius, the other one in Fahrenheit, and you can imagine what sort of a mess it would do to all your statistics, because the numbers would be completely different. So this, you select what you want in your database. So it doesn't really matter what your software sends, because the scripts will convert the numbers before saving it to the database to these units. So you don't have to worry about that. But these are going to be the units which will be in your database. So it's not really that important, but the important thing is that whatever you choose here, you may not change in the future. Unlike the display units, which are units in which you will see your data on the web page. So I'm assuming that in most cases this will be the same. What this means is that, okay, my data in the database is in degrees Celsius, and I want to see the numbers on my web page in Celsius as well. Theoretically, you could change this. If I did this, this means that I will have all my numbers in degrees Celsius, but before they are displayed on the page, when the script loads them from your database, before it displays them, it will convert it to Fahrenheit. And the good thing about this is that because this is done dynamically, even your users can change the units. So for example, if you have this to Celsius like this, now let's say that someone from the US looks at my page and they're not familiar with the degrees Celsius. So on the page they can change the display units, and one thing I want to emphasize is that if they do that, it's not going to change this setting in your actual page. It's just going to save it as a cookie on their computer, so they will see your page in degrees Fahrenheit, but that will only be saved on their computer, and it will have no effect on this settings file. This settings file is always just for you. You are the only one who can change this, and it's password protected. So this basically just says what you want your page to look like when I load it the first time. If I've never been to your site before, this is what's going to load. So in most cases you will have this same. And this is temperature, this is wind speed and wind gust, this is pressure, this is precipitation and rain rate, this would be the height, so we have meters and feet, and this is visibility. Okay, limits. This is closely related to this previous section. The script that is responsible for updating your database basically checks the data before it saves it there. Sometimes, for example, my station, it's not a very good one, and when the batteries are low, it sometimes reports nonsense. And it might just report a temperature of, I don't know, minus 999. Now, that obviously is not a realistic number. So what you can do here is you specify the limits, i.e. the interval between which that number has to be in order for it to be saved to the database. So if the number reported by the station is outside of these limits, it will just be ignored and it will not be saved to your database. Therefore, it's absolutely crucial that you make sure this corresponds to these database units. Otherwise, so a common mistake, a common problem people have is with the pressure. The template here has, by default, uses HPA. So people often change this to inches if they want to use inches in their database, here too. And then they just skip this part. But as you can see, in hectopascals, the usual range of pressure is 950 to 1100. It's actually even less. This is just to allow some reserve, but it would be something like this. Now, obviously, this is nonsense for inches. So if you didn't change this, if you just left it like this, your numbers in inches are likely to be somewhere in the range between like 28 and 32. So if you didn't change this, like if something like 29 was reported by the station, it would say, oh, hang on, 29, that's less than 950, which is the minimum allowed value. So I'll just ignore it. And so what that happens is that you have no data for your pressure. So you want to make sure that you specify each of these. So again, this is temperature, this is humidity, and you might want to learn these icons because they're used all over the template. So this is always an icon for temperature, this is always humidity, pressure, this is precipitation. In this case, I should have included this here, but this is rain rate, which is likely to be higher than your rain. And your rain corresponds to the daily cumulative value. So this is the number, maximum number allowed per day. This minimum value, this really shouldn't be here because it's always going to be 0. Likewise for the wind, this is wind speed, this is wind gust. You want to make sure that the minimum is always at 0 because you will always have minimum of 0. But for example, this means that it would ignore any negative numbers if they were reported. And here we set the maximum allowed wind speed, average wind speed, this is wind gust, this is solar radiation. Again, if you disabled your solar sensor up here, you can just ignore this. Just leave it as it is. It won't have an effect. Here is formats. So this is just something that basically a customization for your site. So it depends what you're familiar with and what you want to see on your page. So you choose the date format, and this is used across the entire template. So anytime there's some date or time reported, it will use this format you specify here. This is date. So this is only when a date is stated. This is when we're talking about time. This is when we want to display both date and time together. So you select the one you want. This is in general if you prefer metric or imperial. If you prefer the 24-hour or the 12-hour, 12-hour being the AM, PM, 24-hour would be hours from 0 to 24. First day of the week, it can be Sunday or Monday. This is used in calendars, for example. And default graph interval. There's a page with graphs, and you can change from today to yesterday to whatever, all these options. And this again is just what you want to load by default, but you can then change it on the page. This is just when I open the page, what I want to see. And the default parameter: temperature, humidity, pressure, precipitation, wind speed, wind gust, or solar radiation. Okay, and in this video, the last thing I'll talk about is the user options. So, as I've mentioned, your users can change some parts on your site, and that includes the design, which will be these two primary colors, primary and secondary. They can also change the font, the units, and the language. But again, I want to emphasize, this will not change your settings here. This will only save it locally on their PC, so it will only show on their computer. So if I change it to, if I were on your site and I change the units, it will only be me who sees those units, and that change in the settings will be saved on my computer, not here. So you don't have to worry that users will be able to change your settings. And if you disable this, it simply means that your page you will not allow your users to change this, so it will always use the settings that you specified here. It's up to you, but what I recommend is that at least this you keep enabled, because that allows the users to change language. In case someone's looking at your site and they're from a different country or want to change language, then if you disable this, your page will only be available in the language you specified here, the main one, the default one, and it will not be possible to change this. Okay, so that's it for this video.